Okay, this is the Ancient and Medieval History lesson for Wednesday, the 29th of September 2021. And for the first time, I'm going to be teaching the creation myths a little differently. What we have done in the past is I've assigned students to research one particular myth, either as an individual or as part of a small group, and then gather information on it and report it out to the class verbally. The good thing about that is it gets you in front of the class, it gets you teaching, and it has you do some research. Instead, I am going to, for the sake of speed, and to see what happens, whether you get it well enough or not, I'm going to go through these myths, and I will have people come up and read them, but we will discuss them as a class as lessons rather than as you doing research and reporting out. So we'll see how that goes. And if it becomes clear that this is a terrible mistake, then go back and do the other thing. Now, for the first one, Zoroastrianism. I've really got to get a new written myth because the myth I use is a little bit different from this. Let me tell you about Zoroastrianism. Before that, let me tell you why we're doing creation myths. You ever meet anyone who was there at the beginning of the universe? I haven't. I mean, there's God, and I believe that he was there making it happen, but it's not the same thing as being able to talk to an eyewitness. Yeah, I was there. I saw the universe created. I mean, how would you do that? Because to do that, you'd have to be outside the universe, looking at it being born, like being there in the moments before the Big Bang. Where would you be? When would you be? There's no universe yet. So that's kind of difficult. So we don't exactly know. Various peoples throughout the years have had various stories that they've told to try to make sense of the world. More than that, we today have a creation myth based on astrophysics and on evolutionary biology. Not every one of us adheres to it, but the society as a whole accepts some superstitious understanding of Big Bang physics and biological evolution. We will be covering that in more detail after we do these myths. So if no one was there, and if the proof we have just produces a set of scientific theories, what's the point of wondering about the creation of the universe? Well, first of all, as human beings, we are naturally curious. We ask the question that 2-year-olds around the world are absolutely famous for, 2, 3, 4-year-olds. Why? Why is there cold? Why does snow fall? Why is the sun bright? And if you have any younger relatives that you babysit or just get together with at family gatherings, you know that what I'm saying is true. Why is a huge question. It's a very important question, too. Because unlike animals or robots, we require meaning that we don't receive. We require meaning that we have to make. We, each of us, have to come up with a meaning of life in order to live. As a child, you can accept what you're taught. As an adult, you owe it to yourself, and you have no real choice. You're going to encounter things that hits your beliefs, your childhood beliefs, in the gut like a giant battering ram. And if those beliefs are not strong, those beliefs will crumble. This is why so many people, when they lose a loved one, lose their faith, at least for a while. Because they don't think about issues of life and death because it's unpleasant until it happens. And when it happens, it's too late to come up with a theory that will help you in a moment like that. We need to understand why we're here. We need to understand what this is all about, this life thing that we're doing. We need to. I mean, you can just blunder your way through life unthinkingly. Adults who do that tend to become addicted to alcohol or drugs or something else because they're escaping life, not facing it. They're avoiding stress by creating a wholly different problem, that of addiction. We, you and I, all of us, come to moments in our life where we have to wonder because life has hit us hard. We've either fallen in love, somebody has betrayed us, somebody we love has died. There's a massive change in our life. We've had to move. There's a new family member. We've got a pet. We've lost a pet. We've made friends, lifelong friends. There are all sorts of things that force us to come to terms with life. Don't believe me. Wait until it happens to you. Some of you have already had it happen. Life hits you in the head as if with a giant wet fish. Bam! And there you are going, why did I just get hit in the head with a fish? Ow! Fish! Scales! Cut! Ugh. Not good. Very bad. Don't let somebody hit you in the head with a fish. That's good advice. How do you stop it? With a hook or a net? The idea of the creation myth isn't really about how the universe came to be. It's not what it's about. Despite our modern sensibilities, most people could care less about scientific truth. What they want is something more real than that. Fundamental reason and meaning. And fundamental meaning doesn't come from facts, it comes from faith. Facts are not worth killing for, dying for, or living for most people. There are exceptions. I've met one or two scientists who would happily walk into the sun's corona if they could learn something nobody had ever learned before. Even if they might not be able to pass it on, they'd still do it. Because they, as individuals, have this drive to discover scientifically, but most of us are not like that. Besides, with all of our technology, we're on one little tiny planet, in one medium-sized solar system, with only one star. Most solar systems, or many, have more than one star. In a unremarkable galaxy, in the midst of a universe more massive than I can imagine. I tried showing you some sense of the scale of things. If we don't really understand why or how the universe came to be, do you think that shepherds from the Middle East would have a better chance? Do you think that people building the first cities in India would, or tribesmen in Africa, or Indians in the southwest of what becomes the United States? We don't know. And the likelihood is, for at least the foreseeable, we won't be able to know without a doubt how the universe came to be. And even if we learn how it came to be, we're not going to know why exactly. Because why isn't a question of empirical evidence. It's not a question of testing measurable things in experiments. Why is something you always have to decide for yourself. You may decide between other people's theories which one you agree with, or you may decide to develop your own idea. But it's a decision that you make. Like the decision to be honest, or the decision to be honorable, or the decision not to do bad things or wicked things. In the end, creation myths are less about how things came to be, and they are much, 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 much more about why. Why is the universe as it is? Why is our life as it is? Why do people age? Why do we get this degenerative disease that turns us from healthy young people into little withered old people before we die, if we live long enough? Why do good things happen to bad folk? Why do bad things happen to good folk? There are questions that cannot be answered easily. One of the most horrible things I ever heard happened to a former colleague who taught here. Newly married, has a beautiful stepdaughter. They're out by the lake having a wonderful day, and a tree falls on the stepdaughter and kills her. Lovely girl. And she's gone. Because a tree fell on her. How do you deal with things like that? That's what I'm talking about. They can happen on the good side too. You could think that you're going to have a baby that has problems, and then the baby grows up without those problems. You could think that you're going to be alone forever, unloved and unappreciated, and then you find somebody who sees genuine wonder and joy in you. These things shake us to our core, and we need to know why. And so all systems of belief, to some extent, have a creation myth. And that creation myth tries to explain, or at least begin to explain, why. So I'm going to start out with telling you that so that you can listen with the right ear. If you're sitting there going, it's not evolution, it's not the Big Bang Theory, this isn't what science teaches us, remember that Darwin understood evolution very differently from the way we understand it today. And remember that our understanding of astrophysics is growing by leaps and bounds every decade. And that string theory, while not having been proven yet, may actually demonstrate some degree of truth eventually when we understand it better. We don't know. Science does not deal in truth. It deals in theory. Data and theory, not truth. And this is why scientists disagree so often. If you get a group of scientists together and get them on almost any subject relating to science, they're going to argue. They have the same information. They all understand the data and the experiments, but they disagree about the interpretation of it. That should tell you something. Human beings are not dealing in science with something that settles truth. It doesn't do that. That is the wrong tool. That's like using a pizza on your vehicle to try to drive down the street. You put a pizza on the axle, you're not going to go very far unless you're riding a balloon, because a pizza does not have the wherewithal to be a wheel. Even if you let it age to the point where it's rock hard, it's still not going to support the weight of probably even the axle, let alone the vehicle. Wrong tool for the wrong job. I've got a spoon in my hand, and I'm facing a crocodile that wants to eat me. Now, I suppose having a spoon is better than not having anything, but spoon versus crocodile is not a good matchup as far as I'm concerned. Okay, yeah, maybe if I, like in Dungeons and Dragons, roll a natural 20 and roll a double odd, I can attack, I can leap at the crocodile and stab it through the eye into its brain. But even then, it might still kill me in its death throes. A spoon is not the right tool for facing a crocodile. Science is useful for so many things. We have the internet, we have cures for polio, we put men on the moon, we can fly from one side of the country to the other in less than a day. We can travel a mile a minute over the surface of a highway. We get fresh vegetables and fruit all year round, even in the heart of winter. We can get entertainment, best in the world. We can see entertainment from decades past. Science has done a lot for us. It's given us nuclear weapons, which so far have kept the peace. So far. We hope. They continue to keep the peace. The fear of them will deter serious war. We haven't had serious war since 1945, since we dropped not one but two atom bombs on Japan. So science has its uses. I'm not denying it. But science can't tell you the meaning of life. Nothing can. I'll say that again. Nothing can. Ultimately, you have to decide in your own head, in your own heart, in your own soul, what you think the meaning of life is. There are the stories that you heard as a child. There's the faith that you were raised in. Those may be the ones you choose. They ended up being the ones I chose. But you have to decide for yourself. Does this make sense? Do you believe it? Do you believe it? And if you don't believe it, then that's just, how you spent your childhood. It's not your religion. So we begin with Zoroastrianism. Prophet Zoroaster preached in Persia many hundreds of years before Christ. He's one of the world's earliest prophets. Persia is located east of the Zagros Mountains, north of the Persian Gulf, south of the Caspian Sea, and there's this big plateau land here. The Persians, or the Aryans, or the Iranians, they're called all three, were a horse people. Well, Zoroaster had a revelation, and his revelation is the basis of a religion called Zoroastrianism. There are still people who are Zoroastrians. They're called Parsis. They live in India. But at one time, Zoroastrianism was the religion of a great part of the world in Western Asia and Eastern Europe because the Persian Empire was Zoroastrian. The Zoroastrians are neither polytheists or monotheists. What did I just say? The Persian Empire is neither polytheistic or monotheistic.
They don't believe in multiple gods, and they don't believe in one God.
Right. They are dualists. They are dualistic. They believe in two primal forces. So here's the story. Don't worry about what's in your book. Your notebook. I've got to get it out of there. In one universe, an entire universe, Ahura Mazda, the wise Lord, or Maz, the Lord of Light, exists in perfection. He is light and good and lawful order incarnate. And everything in his realm is him. Then there is a different realm of creation, a different dimension, a different plane of existence, where Ahriman, or Angramanyu, the Dark Lord, is all that is evil and violent and chaotic and unpredictable and unsafe. And his world is a world of roiling darkness forever. And it's all him. Like matter and antimatter. But then a moment happens where these two universes, just reaching out, touch one another. Boom! In that moment of contact, an explosion forms, just like two equal and opposite particles or wavicles of matter and antimatter coming together. You have an antimatter explosion, it would make an atomic or hydrogen bomb look like a firecracker. An antimatter bomb, properly constructed, could split the earth. One bomb, gone. So light and darkness meet explosively. We are inside the explosion. Our universe of light and dark, space and time, earth, air, fire, water, spirit and body, everything, plants and animals, metal and rock, dirt and air, all of it, clouds and bunnies and duckies, everything is within the explosion. The universe that we perceive is within this expanding explosion. Now, An explosion is an inherently unstable state. So, sooner or later, the explosion will settle out, and either Ahura Mazda will be wiped out by Angra Mainyu, light will be destroyed by darkness, or, if we're lucky, Angra Mainyu and his realm of dark will be destroyed by Ahura Mazda. Ultimately, there can be only one survivor. Ultimately, the explosion will end. Ultimately, our world will cease to be. What determines the fate of the explosion? What will determine the fate of our world? Oddly enough, that's where we come in, according to Zoroastrianism. We exist as decision makers. We have the spirit and the mind to be moral or immoral, saintly or wicked. And every choice that we make has a moral component to it. Do you want fries with that? Has a moral component. It may be wafer thin, feather light, but it still has a moral component. At some point, a critical mass of good or evil choices made by us will tilt the universe into ultimate darkness and hell, or ultimate light and heaven. So there is a difference in the Persian belief system. Many Christians, Jews, and Muslims wonder about Satan, Lucifer. In Greek, the word for the devil is diabolos. The word diabolos means confusion through and through. In other words, that evil comes from a confusion. The word Satan means the adversary, the enemy. And Lucifer is a name given to one of the angels of light who became Satan by deciding, hey, God, you screwed up. Let me help you out, which was the first sin. The angel Lucifer determining that God isn't really up for the job and that he needs Lucifer's help to create things, which is kind of sinful when you're dealing with an omniscient, omnipotent being, an all-knowing, all-powerful entity that just created you. Many Christians, Jews, and Muslims look at the existence we live in as a fight between God and the devil, and our lives as a battlefield. Now, there is some truth to that. Martin Luther's most famous hymn was "A Mighty Fortress is Our God," which you'll hear next year as a part of my class. But the idea that life is war, for us, from our point of view, may be true. All of us are tempted. Why? Because misery loves company. Because evil loves spreading itself by deceiving people. But theologically, no Christian, Jew, or Muslim, no monotheist should look at Satan as anything but a minor annoyance to God, barely an inconvenience, because it's like a contest between Bambi and Godzilla. There's no fight. In monotheism, from God's point of view, Satan's one of his creatures. And God has allowed free will, and Satan has chosen to use his free will in rebellion against God. Ultimately, Satan has no power relating to God. Now, from our point of view, as mortal, fallible, finite human beings, we could be seduced into evil, and we could be tricked into wickedness, and we might have the worst aspects within ourselves brought out so that we ourselves just become evil. So on an individual level, yeah, if you believe in God and the devil is a danger to you and to me because we're people. But there's no way, none, in the end, that any devil will win against God, not in a monotheistic sense, because there's only one God. There's only one God, and it ain't the devil. The devil is a byproduct of free will. You give some people freedom, a few of them are going to abuse it. There's the story right there of the devil. But he'll try to persuade everyone he's right until he's God. Monotheists don't believe that the devil is ultimately going to be anything like a danger to God. It's just not going to happen. But Persian dualists, Zoroastrians, that's a different story. To them, the universe is split into the world of light and of darkness. And they're both roughly equivalent in power. So in Persian Zoroastrianism, the belief that God and the devil are at war makes total sense. Ultimately, the Bible has a happy ending. God breaks through history. After the purging moment of the Day of Judgment, there's heaven on earth. It's called the millennium, the 1,000 years of peace. The Bible has a happy ending. Zoroastrianism, it's all in question. What will happen? Who will win? Ultimately, our decisions as individuals and as a species will determine the fate of the universe. This is not true in Judaism or Christianity or Islam. It is absolutely true in Zoroastrianism. They don't know how things are going to turn out. They hope things are going to turn out well, but we have got to live right and make good choices. Otherwise, not only will our soul go to hell, but the universe literally will go to hell also. That is what I would have you know of Zoroastrianism. I will also tell you this. They share certain odd funeral rites with Tibetan Buddhists. One of the odd funeral rites of the Zoroastrians is a deep fear of the undead. Now, there are certain conditions that people can get where they seem dead. You listen for breathing, you feel for breath, you can't feel it, you can't hear it. You listen for a heartbeat, there doesn't seem to be one. You feel for a pulse, there doesn't seem to be one. The person seems dead. And yet, people wake up in their graves, having been buried. Now, they may not be the same because their brain has been starved of oxygen, but their body is alive. And maybe their mind is too. This is why in late Victorian England, about 130 years ago, wealthy people would often have a mausoleum that they were buried in, and there'd be an alarm that if you were inside your coffin and you suddenly woke up, you could pull, boop, boop, boop. A steam whistle would go off, and people would come and they'd break you out. The fear of being misidentified as dead is bad enough. Add to that what happens if suddenly you just buried Uncle Joe, beloved Uncle Joe who was great to you when you were a kid. Uncle Joe, there's nobody quite like him. And then a few days after you've buried Uncle Joe, you see Uncle Joe's body coming back, sort of dragging its injured feet, and he looks gray, and he's covered in blood, and he's in dirt, and his fingernails because he's had to dig his way out of his own grave. And he doesn't recognize you because his brain isn't there anymore. You're more dealing with the reptile part of the brain, the medulla oblongata, the brainstem, the part of the brain that has your instincts. So Joe's back, and he's sort of alive, but he's not really, he's not Joe anymore. He's somebody else. This is a horror show. So how do the Zoroastrians and the Tibetan Buddhists deal with this? Do any of you know? You might have just picked this up. It's kind of grisly. Okay. What they do is they actually get together all the loved ones, and either a priest or the loved ones themselves take cleavers and break the body up into small pieces. And they literally throw the pieces to the dogs. So that there is no way anyone's coming back from that. Your soul has gone on, you pray for the soul is gone. The body is meat. But the body can be possessed by a demon, and that's what they think the undead are. The zombies are. They're demons in human flesh. Poor Uncle Joe's spirit is gone, but his body is now occupied by a demon that's dangerous. So you chop the body up at the joints, you throw the sections to the dogs consume it, and the person is truly gone. It seems unusually grim to us, but it made sense to them. So, what I'll have you know, what I'll expect you to remember, are the basic truths of Zoroastrianism. There are two gods, a Lord of Light, a Lord of Dark. They are in competition with one another. We live in the explosion created by their encounter, and our decisions will determine the fate of the universe. Any questions on that before we move into Genesis? Okay. We have Genesis divided up into two sections. I could use a couple of people to come up here and read the first section. So, who will volunteer, or shall I pick? Sir, come on up. And who else? Miss. Okay. Bring up your work, because you're going to need to read it. Bring your notepad up. Okay. So where we are is in item 2, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Genesis, right? There is a little bit on the second page side. So what I recommend is that Miss Klein? No. Keith.
Yes.
Definitely a K. That you do from where it says number 1 to where it says the 4th day, and then, so, the 4th day there. And then you, sir, behind me, please. Nathan. You pick up from here after the 4th day, and you read down and do the bit on the next page too. Okay? Very good. Folks, please read along. And what we're going to do is they're going to read the sections, and then we're going to discuss what it may mean. So taking notes is not a bad idea. Thank you for doing this. Ms. Keith, proceed.
In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was formless, void, and darkness covered in the face of deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning, the first day. And God said, "Let there be a dome in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters from the waters." So God made the dome, and separated the waters that were under the dome from the waters that were above the dome. And it was so. God called the dome sky. And there was evening, and there was morning, the second day. And God said, "Let the waters under the sky be gathered together into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. God called the dry land earth, and the waters that were gathered together he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let the earth put forth vegetation, plants yielding seed, and fruit trees of every kind on earth that will bear fruit with the seed in it." And it was so. The earth brought forth vegetation, plants yielding seeds of every kind, and trees of every kind bearing fruit with the seed in it. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the third day. And God said, "Let there be lights in the dome of the sky to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years. And let them be lights in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth." And it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day, and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars. God set them in the dome of the sky to give light upon the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the fourth day.
Thank you.
And God said, "Let the waters bring forth swarms of living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the dome of the sky." So God created the great sea monsters and every living creature that moves, of every kind, with which the waters swarm, and every winged bird of every kind. And God saw that it was good. God blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply, and fill the waters and the seas, and let birds multiply on the earth." And there was evening, and there was morning, the fifth day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures of every kind, cattle and creeping things, wild animals of the earth of every kind. And it was so. God made the wild animals of the earth of every kind, and the cattle of every kind, and everything that creeps upon the ground of every kind. God saw that it was good. Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the wild animals of the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps upon the earth. So God created humankind in his image. In the image of God he created them, male and female he created.
Okay. Do you want to continue or not?
I'm fine.
Okay. This.
God blessed them, and God said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the air, and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. God said, see, I have given you every plant yielding seed that is upon the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit, you shall have them for food. And to every beast on the earth, and to every bird of the air, and to everything that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I have given every green plant for food, and it was so. God saw everything that he had made, and indeed it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the sixth day. Thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all their multitude. And on the seventh day God finished his work that he had done, and he rested on the seventh day from all the work that he had done. So God blessed the seventh day and hallowed it, because on it God rested from all the work that he had done in creation. These are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created.
Thank you both. Please have a seat. Now, there are two creation stories in Genesis that feed off of one another. We have just read the first, which is Genesis chapter 1 and the opening of chapter 2. There are two basic fundamental things that this is saying, as far as I'm concerned, and you can add to them if you want. The first is God creates everything, without exception, all that is seen and unseen. Nothing that exists was not made by God. That includes the bad things like poisonous snakes and diseases, and the good things like bunnies, duckies, and kittens. Everything, without exception, is created by God. There's no second creator, there's no evil God, it's all God. The second thing is the role of humanity. We are made in God's image. And what that means is that there's a bit of God in each of us. And what that means is that you shouldn't abuse the people that you're with in this world. You should not treat people badly, because doing so you then treat God badly, and you abuse the God in you. That's what I've got for today. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful day. Hopefully we all will wake up a little more.